From the session for you today?
Oh, look, it was certainly disappointing seeing the sixth consecutive day of declines now. Obviously, that oil price really weighing on sentiment on the market, I think, and that was clearly reflected once again in that energy space where it certainly did come under pressure. We're seeing those oil prices dropping to new 5.5-year lows. So obviously seeing pressure in a lot of those energy stocks. And of course, that materials sector, we did certainly lose momentum, as Michael has mentioned, after that China data did come through. So that didn't add any confidence in terms of that materials sector. Those lower commodity prices that came through didn't help out at all, and of course BHP and Rio really did weigh on the market today after we did see some heavy falls over in London. So really that materials and energy sector continuing to weigh. Obviously those defensives, so the utilities and the property sector were the ones slightly holding up the market today, but as Mike has mentioned, fairly light volume, so potentially can't read into it too much, but certainly expecting that potentially we will continue to see pressure on the market.
Leanne, it's Mark Todd here from the NAB. BHP's down 3.21% to 27.42. Where's the bottom on this thing? What's the sentiment amongst the investor base that you've got?
Mark, look, we've certainly always remained fairly optimistic on the outlook for BHP. Obviously seeing it continuing to come under pressure, as you say, it did take a heavy tumble today. That was quite surprising given that iron ore price was relatively flat overnight, but obviously still trading below $70 a tonne, and I think that is concerning, certainly seeing it at those low levels. So I've mentioned it before, we certainly do remain positive on the outlook given those underlying fundamentals. So difficult to predict the bottom of these stocks at the moment, but I do think that at these levels it potentially is looking like good buying opportunity if you are taking more of a longer term view on the stock, certainly like, you know, their strong balance sheet and of course the fact that they are diversified across a number of those commodities. So long term certainly do like the stock, but it's just so hard to predict at the moment, continuing to see this volatility.
Leanne, Woodside, another one of the big stocks in focus. A lot of people, despite the big drop off we saw in oil, suggesting we might see a bit of support from Woodside, considering one of the announcements in regards Apache, but we saw some significant falls and a lot of focus on the deferral of investment for Browse.
Certainly right, James. We did see the stock under pressure. Obviously, the fall in that oil price not helping, but as you say, delaying their Browse LNG project by up to another year or so. So that decision likely to come out around mid-2016. I think there's also a bit of concern about the cost involved with that project. Some analysts estimating up to about $40 billion or so. So I suppose it is a decision that the company can't make lightly, and obviously a reason why they have deferred that project. But certainly, I think the acquisition that they've come through today, the purchase of some of those oil and LNG interests, I do think looks very positive. Certainly have continued their very disciplined approach to a lot of these acquisitions, certainly waiting for the right assets to come through at the right price, and certainly within this challenging environment, this low oil price environment, they've taken advantage of some of those higher quality assets. So I do think that this actually looks very positive long term. It's obviously been under a lot of pressure to come through with some new growth opportunities, given that some of its production is forecasted to start falling off. So certainly looks long-term positive. It's going to be immediately earnings per share accretive. That dividend payout ratio is going to be maintained at about 80%, and also saying that their previous guidance in terms of those dividends will be maintained. So certainly looks very positive. Obviously there is more to come, so certainly waiting on any further news, but I do think longer term this certainly does look positive despite actually seeing that share price under a little bit of pressure today.